Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I am super excited because we have Connor Rogers on the show today. Now, I could say he's from Bleacher Report, which is absolutely true, but this man is a man of many talents, wears many hats. I know you do the Stock Exchange podcast, something for the Mets, something for what all are you doing?
Just trying to stay busy, man. Trying to stay alive and pay the bills, right? But no, I'm having a good time. I mean, I'm always going to be my main work, my full time job is being the lead NFL draft analyst at Bleacher Report. It's been fun to be back in the draft podcast game at PFF. They've been amazing. I love working over there. Me and Trevor have had a blast. And then, it's funny, like things do get really quiet about the second half of May, June, July. I watch about 50 to 100 guys, but nobody really cares about the draft. There's not an appetite for the draft then. So I grew up a giant New York Mets fan, and now I get to host a podcast for them with our local affiliate here, SMY. So, man, I'm just trying to plan out my year. So I get stir crazy. I really do.
I hear you. Well, the most pressing question I have more than anything else is how do you get your hair to look that good? Like, I do the best I can, but
A lot of
there's only
wax.
a
A
lot of
lot of
wax.
wax. Yeah, a lot of wax. It's hit or miss too. Like sometimes, especially on stock exchange, I just got to throw a hat on. It's going in 45 different directions. I'm lucky my barbershop is like literally on my block in my neighborhood.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I think if I was back in the day when I used to have to drive to the barber, it wouldn't be kept up like this at all.
No, it's impressive. Well, let's get into some of these running backs, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is this rookie running back class. Uh, so first of all, I think the general consensus, and there's a few people that feel differently, but it seems like the general consensus is that Breece Hall is the RB1 in this class. Would you agree with that, or is there somebody else that you think is challenging for it, or is it just him far and away?
No, I'm there. I'm comfortably there, I would say, especially when I finally started to stack all of these guys outside of their position groups. That's when you start to see the tiering, whereas when they're in their position groups for so long, which is typically how I do my process first, you can start to wonder, how big is the gap? Like right now, I have Brees Hall as the 28th player overall in this class, which is a really good
Yeah.
ranking for a running back. I don't think he'll be a first round pick, but I think he's a really, really good player. And then when you kind of go down the board and look at that for him, the next guy for me is Kenneth Walker at 49. And so that's a
Okay.
that's a giant jump. And of course, Isaiah Spiller at 52, Damian Pierce at 56. So not
Okay.
shocking. You get that next tiers all together for me.
Sure.
I love Brees's game. I mean, I've been watching him for a long time. I was really excited about him when he was an underclassman. I compared him to Deuce McAllister, a little bit of a throwback comp
Oh,
there. A guy
yeah.
that's he's got some size and speed, really explosive. Team captain as a junior. That means something at Iowa State. He's got a lot of good. He's got natural feel for a big runner,
He
and
does.
these guys, a lot of these guys are big runners. Some of them are violent. Some of them are shifty. Some of them are good athletes. That natural feel at that size, in my opinion, I don't want to say is rare because we've seen a lot of good running backs come through for a while, but it's a high quality trait that makes him, in my eyes, a top 50 selection.
Yeah, last year Javonte Williams was my RB1, and we have Brees Hall as my RB1 this year. And it was interesting comparing the two because I feel like watching Javonte Williams last year was like the equivalent of listening to heavy metal. He was just breaking faces.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Brees Hall this year I feel it's a lot more like smooth jazz.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just everything's under control, everything's smooth,
Yep.
everything's flowing. He's a fun watch.
He really is. I mean, I wrote down he's a big back that can play small and slippery. And that's one of the best compliments you can give a big back because depending what you're seeing in front of you, week by week, you can't always be the big bully on the field. Sometimes you're going to have to play small. Sometimes you're going to be going up against defenses that are, a little bit heavier and not as quick. And how do you get away from those guys? Rather, vice versa, when you're going against a smaller defense, do you have a little bit of power? Do you have a thick frame that can take on that contact and keep the yards moving with your legs? So Brees is a do-it-all guy. I think the pass pro is the one thing that needs work. I thought surprisingly the effort was a little inconsistent in my eyes. I think the frame is surefire built for pass pro. He's
Sure.
got the frame to take on rushers, but I just would like to see that effort, go up a notch. And I think with NFL coaching, it will.
Absolutely. So you cover mostly NFL stuff, but I know you dabble a little bit into the fantasy realm as
Oh
well.
yeah.
Uh, name me a player that you think there's a big gap in how NFL evaluators will look at him versus fantasy football players will evaluate him?
Yeah, I mean, I get my ass whooped in a league with you guys in one of these leagues, I think. And that might actually, I can't remember if that's, I'm in 2 dynasty leagues and I'm very
Yeah.
new. I'm new to dynasty in the grand scheme. I've only been doing it for I think 2 years, and it's incredible. So I love that aspect of it. Man, that's a great question, because I think something that, I'm on Twitter enough, but I'm not. I feel like the fantasy community definitely really falls in love with day 3 players very often, and
Sure.
like, so you rip off a couple to me, and I'll say the disparity. Who are some, projected or day 3 guys that the fantasy community is just loving up right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll end up day 2, but I'm assuming he's day 3. The first guy that came to my mind anyway was a guy like maybe Brian Robinson.
Okay,
Like, do NFL evaluators like him more than like, because for fantasy, people are kind of leaving him a little bit for dead. But I've heard some
really?
rumblings that, yeah, I've heard some
Okay,
rumblings
it's a
that
good
he could be
starting point.
like a third round guy, maybe. How do you feel about Brian Robinson? I think it's mostly because people aren't sure about his pass catching, maybe profiles more as a first and second down running back. How do you feel about him?
Great starting point. So I really like Brian Robinson. I've liked him since the summer. Somebody that's waited his turn behind all these great running backs. He was at Alabama in that room for a long time. And, I'll say why the NFL likes him so much more than the fantasy community is because you can put him on the field and trust him. And
Hmm.
that is something that I cannot emphasize enough when you're trying to, as a fantasy evaluator, project usage, right? You know this as much as anyone. You're projecting how good is the player, but the hardest part is projecting usage. Look at last year. Everybody loved Trey Sermon. Loved Trey Sermon. They were
Yeah,
excited about Trey Sermon. They thought and he could still be great. I'm not saying that. And he was hurt a lot, but he was hurt a lot in college. And there is something about reliable backs going to the NFL that might not be the Ferraris, might not be flashy, might not be the sports car, but Brian Robinson is excellent in pass pro. He will
yeah,
bang between the tackles. For that body type, he's got enough burst to get outside and take on a DB in a car crash. And when you look at that, that will lead to opportunities as a pass catcher. Is he going to be James Cook, right? Like, is he going to be a guy that's out there running wheel routes and taking the ball and turning 5 yards into 35 yards? He's not going to be that guy. But
sure.
in a PPR format, is he going to be a check down Charlie for somebody? I wouldn't be shocked if we reach that point at some point in his career. Not saying year 1, maybe 2 or 3, because
Sure.
he is a guy that can take on pass rushers and not leave his quarterback for dead. And he's reliable on first and second down. So sometimes with running backs, the jack of all trades are the guys that get on the field because they don't control where they go. Brian Robinson might end up in a situation where the team has no third down back. He might end up in a situation where the team has no early down workhorse. And
That's a good
the
point.
fact that he is a shape, a puzzle piece that fits in anywhere is why he's probably going to go in the 4th round. I would say maybe 3rd wouldn't be shocking. I think that would be a little early for me, but he'll probably go in the 4th round. And he's somebody that has the experience and the body type and the resume to start if he has to, or handle a 1B role right away.
All right, before we get back to this awesome interview with Connor Rogers, just want to stop for a second and tell you guys about Prize Picks. Yes, Prize Picks. It's an incredible platform. It is the best legal way to do player props. That means if you're looking at futures bets, which is mostly what we're looking at right now in the middle of the offseason, and you're going to say, okay, next year, Justin Jefferson, over under 1,400 receiving yards. You get to pick your over, your under, and you get to pair that with all kinds of other players. So you could do Justin Jefferson's receiving yards, Patrick Mahomes' passing yards. And you know what? If you wanted to mix it up with a few other things, you can do that as well. You can even cross sports. We're talking about baseball, NBA, MMA, all kinds of other action that you can get on prizepicks.com. Great way to win a bunch of money. And best of all, we're going to give you a promo code. That's promo code NERDS to get a 100% deposit match. That's right, 100%. So that means you put in $100, we'll give you $100 to match it. Do that right now. Promo code NERDS. Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And somebody else, and I'm trying to remember. I remember listening to the podcast that you and Trevor did on the running backs, and one of you guys, I don't remember which one, was really high on Kyren Williams. And I
That was
know
me.
that
Yeah.
was pre combine, so there's some things that have happened since then. I'm
Yes.
a big Kyren fan myself. Really like Kyren Williams. Uh, how much did the pro day stuff versus the combine stuff versus the tape stuff. How did you marry all those things together? How do you feel about him now? And is he another one that might be maybe fantasy people like him more than NFL or vice versa?
Wow, I think it's even because I actually think fantasy people might like him more than the NFL. Here's the scoop of Kyren, who on that show, our early running back preview, I had him as the second back in this class. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore because the reality is if you're small and unathletic, that hurts.
Sure.
I don't sugarcoat that. I never will. I mean, here's the thing with Kyren, and I did Ryan Roberts' Irish Breakdown show today, so I've had quite a fix of Kyren Williams today, and I think it's interesting to me. He's going to get the Michael Carter treatment from last year, where
Okay.
he's small and unathletic, but the tape is really damn good. So Michael Carter didn't go in the first 3 rounds. He had to wait till the 4th round. And he ended up being the Jets' best running back last year on a team that loves to run the football. And now his usage is a little easier to project at the NFL level. I think with Kyren, I don't think he's the same runner Michael Carter was, but he's a way better player in the pass game. And the thing with that surprised me with him is not the 40. If you asked me before the combine what he'd run, I would have said a 4.6. It sounds like at the pro day he was around 4.57. The combine he was at 4.65. He's a 4.6 back.
Sure.
That's not great when you're 5'9", 194. But long speed in the NFL at running backs kind of shrug and go, okay, how often do you really see that? What bothered me is a 32-inch vertical, 21st percentile, right? The 10-yard split, not overly explosive. And the fact that the broad jump was under a 40 percentile as well. He's just not an explosive player in the testing. What he does well on tape is he's excellent in pass pro. Goes back to the Brian
Absolutely.
Robinson. He's a great pass catcher. He plays with his hair on fire. He loves being on the football field. He's going to really inspire teammates. Coaches are going to love him. He's got good contact balance. That's something that doesn't show up on the track at Indy. A lot of people forget that. He's got good contact balance. So is Kyren Williams ever going to be a primary feature back in a league that doesn't have many of them anyway? No, he's a very projectable third down back that if you are a PPR format player, he's going to matter in your league somewhere.
Yeah, I loved how fantastic he was in pass pro. He got the second highest grade in the entire class for me in that aspect. And
Who was number one?
I had Devonta Price at number 1 for me.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm a big fan of his game and think there's a lot left on the bone for him at the next level.
well, let's talk about him real quick because he's my sleeper. Partly because once you get that late in the draft, there's a lot of these guys are going to be typecast. They're going to be first and second down backs. They're going to be third down backs. They're going to be doing a lot on special teams. Blah blah blah. It's very rare to have somebody with his size, 6'1", 210 pounds, with his speed, ran the
Yeah.
4.38, which was I knew he was fast. I didn't realize he was that fast. But he's also really good in pass protection. He can do a lot of things really well. And there's a chance if injuries happen, because he's going to get drafted late, I'm assuming. But there's a chance where somebody goes down, he could do all 3 downs potentially. There's a lot left there, and we'll have to see. But tell me what you like about Devonta Price and why you're a fan of his as well.
It feels like there is so much potential for him at the next level that we didn't always get to see at college. And I don't know if it's usage. I don't know if it's where he played. Probably the answer is always somewhere lies in between. And
Sure.
I think with him, he's got a great body type. He's chiseled, 6'1", galloping strides, carries that 210 pounds extremely well. It doesn't look like there's baby fat on the guy at all. When you test sub 4.4, you got the breakaway speed. I love his game at the second level of the field. And it's not just make you miss or try to run through you. There's spin moves. There's creativity that if he can go to a system that can get that train rolling down the track to the second level, he's such a creative runner that if you are that creative, but you also have the gas to hit home runs, there's going to be some opportunity there for a big play. And this is a class that, man, it just lacks big play runners. It really does. We love Breece Hall. There's so much to like about Kenneth Walker as a runner. There's just it's not a big play class. Like Jerome Ford, Price,
Tyler Beatty,
Pierre
maybe.
Strong, and Tyler Beatty. Like those guys, like they have some big playability. But overall, it's just not this class that you're like, man, there's a home run hitter there, there's this there. So Price, the intrigue with the ceiling is so fascinating to me purely as a runner. And like you said, the fact that there is something there in pass pro makes you get a little wide-eyed and go, it's not there right now, but he's one of the, you can maybe count him on one hand, a guy in this class that could turn into a primary feature back.
Yeah, absolutely. When I saw him taking on linebackers and taking on defensive linemen and just the strong base, shoots his hands incredibly well. But he has the size to be able to do it. So, a lot of times for running backs, if you get a stalemate, that's a victory. That's great. There are times he's knocking guys back. So that really opened my eyes a little bit when I started
Man,
watching him.
if you can delay disaster is what I would say. That's a skill. Like, I don't need you to stand guys up. I don't need you to be an eraser. If you can delay disaster by 2 to 3 seconds, you could be on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was going through, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit, you mentioned Brees Hall kind of far and away above a lot of the other running backs. And then there's a lot of, good running backs, and then a lot of like guys that I would kind of profile as like solid backup running backs in this class. Not guys that I think will get a job as a starter anytime soon, but they could be the Alexander Madisons of the world and the Khalil Herberts of the world, and guys that if they get on the field, they're going to be solid, but don't expect them to take the job anytime soon. Of that kind of group of guys, that most of us kind of perceive as like fourth down running back, or fourth round, should say, picks right now. Is there one that stands out to you that's maybe a little bit better than the rest, or isn't getting the publicity that he maybe should, as a guy that could be a starter in this league?
I mean, I would say Damian Pierce is ahead of that. I think he goes in the third, so I won't cheat and put him there. He would be my guy in this
Yeah.
class for that. So I'll go with Tyler Algier. I think
Okay.
that there's just a little bit of everything there. I know he ran a 4.6, but he looks faster than that on film. His body and running style reminds me of Rashard Mendenhall. He's kind of that north-south, I can truck you along the way. Another guy stands out in pass pro, does a really good job there. He's not going to be we need to get this guy 25 touches. He's so creative. He's such a problem kind of runner. That's never who he's going to be. He's going to be in a committee of 3 running backs. But
Sure.
when you look at the right opportunity, that north-south game, that power game, that reliability on third down, I really am a fan of his game in a class, like you said, that's kind of lacking a lot of juice in that area. Like you really get through like Brees Hall at the top, like you said. I think Kenneth Walker and Isaiah Spiller go on day 2 as well. Like I said, Damian Pierce, I think it has had such a nice process here that he
Yeah.
goes on day 2 as well. He's a David Montgomery clone in my eyes. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, I really liked Montgomery, and I think Pierce is really the same exact player. And it's like kind of funny, like Montgomery's been good, and I don't know if anyone cares. It's
Sure.
like, in a weird way. So yeah, and then you get to that group of 4th to 5th round that could be Pierre Strong, that could be Brian Robinson, that could be James Cook. That guy Devonta Price, maybe a little later than that. We'll see Abram Smith, Jerome Ford. I just think Algier has a workhorse body, enough second and third level speed that he can really factor in for a long time.
I want to talk real quick about a guy that was coming out of high school, the best prospect in this class, but had dealt with some injuries early in his career. But then we saw him gain notoriety, do better, or play better, I should say, all the way up into the national championship game, and then just had an incredible combine. And that's Zamir White. We call him Zeus for a reason. It wasn't a surprise that it worked out well. How do you feel about Zamir White at the next level?
He's a fascinating one because when he's been able to play and be given time to get back up to speed, it's looked pretty good. Now, he has an interesting history. He's torn both ACLs, and that is, ACLs in this era are not as much of a concern as they used to be. But when you've torn both ACLs, significant knee injuries, wear and tear on the body, you're coming out of Georgia. That's always going to be a question. But he's a big body bruiser, standout contact balance. What I like the best about him, honestly, I thought the short area quickness really surprised defenders. I thought there was a lot of times where he was able to change direction, and guys were so afraid of hitting that body type head on that they hesitate for a second and get beat by quick feet. So Samir White, man, he's a really promising player that we've been waiting for to be great for so long. Like you said, he was the real deal in that recruiting class. And he comes out of a Georgia program that, has produced obviously top flight runners in the draft year after year. The injury history is going to hurt him, but I would not be surprised for him to be picked on day 3. And because of how rounded he is, right? He's another guy in that Algier mold that he'll chop it up in pass pro. You got to be able to
Yeah.
do that at Georgia. And the fact that he's got that big bodied bruising, as much wear and tear as it has, he's one of those guys that you write down. Landing spot will matter so much from a fantasy impact. Like, where is he going to
Yeah.
go? But I can buy in if he finds any opportunity, because he's been in college for a long time, playing at a high level when he can play, that you wonder if the injuries are finally behind this guy. And that's a risky statement in its own self. The
Sure.
talent has always been top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched on Devonta Price, and you were absolutely right. That was arguably the best quote you've had in here. Is the fantasy football guys love those late round running backs, the ones no one talks about. We're going 20, 25 players deep, guys that'll
I
likely
get
go
it.
undrafted.
Part of the business.
It is. It is. Is there one guy in that range? We mentioned Devonta Price, so we'll leave him out. But is there anyone else in that range that's like this is the dart throw I want to take. This is the long shot that I'd be willing to gamble on.
Sincere McCormick, I think, is
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
I don't really get the sense the NFL loves him. And I think some in the fantasy community probably will, and some in the draft community like myself will. He looks like Devin Singletary to me. And it's
Oh yeah.
funny, he played in the same conference. So it's funny when you come up with that comp. He's just someone that is going to be able to legitimately impact the game as a pass catcher. And he's got that patient, bouncy running style, can get skinny in traffic. I thought that lateral movement, like Motor Singletary, was just the calling card for him. The stop, the go, the change direction, the make you miss, the keep running. 65 career receptions, only one drop. The hands are very, very
Very
good.
good. Yep.
So, when you look at, he's a day 3 guy. He might go in the 6th round. But once again, when you can be on the field in the passing game and you're a legitimate pass catcher that has that kind of change of direction, I think that's somebody I would be willing to gamble on.
All right, one last question for me, and this is more just out of my own curiosity. I know you have to spend so much time focusing in on each draft class and going through countless hours of tape. Do you ever peek ahead into the next year, or are you always like, you know what, I got to stay disciplined, I got to focus on these guys and get this done?
I get a little carried away with it at times during the college football season. Then once it's over, I'm like, I don't even like. I've seen people tweet out like some early names already. I'm like, let's
Sure.
get this draft done. Obviously we're going to be talking a lot about Robinson from Texas next
Yeah.
year. I mean, he's tremendous. Next year's class is really exciting. It's got a little bit more star power than this. So I try not to. I always classify it as TV tape analysis. Like, I watched the game, I saw a couple plays here. That guy is someone I can't wait to watch over summer. But breaking down the exact part of their game is something that'll have to wait till June. Or else you'll never get this class done. It's I always tell people I'm a one man show for the draft at BR. So, I try to rank at least 300 players, and with the impact the fantasy community has and the impact of fantasy as a whole, I do the most wide receivers and running backs out of any position group. Like, right now I have 36 wide receivers ranked. And
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
and it's not even for the fact, like, I'm sure plenty of them won't get drafted. I get it. But over summer, people are going to be at, like, oh, this guy's in camp or he's having a good camp. Like, I want to make sure I evaluated all of those guys, because I think it's great for the draft how much people care, because I think the fantasy community has made everybody care so much about day 3 of the draft, when 10, 12 years ago, it just wasn't like that. So it's a very fortunate circumstance.
It is, yeah. Everybody's always looking to find the next James Robinson, the next
Yeah,
Arian Foster, the next. Yep,
yeah, it probably
absolutely.
creates a little bit of hyperbole, but that's okay. It's no big deal.
Absolutely. Well, Connor, I genuinely appreciate
Yeah,
your
man.
time coming on. Especially, people don't know behind the scenes, I had goofed up something with my camera, and
It's fine.
you were very gracious with me, so I appreciate that. Tell everybody real quick. I'm sure they already follow you. They already know, but remind them anyway where they can find you, where they can find all your work, and anything you want to plug real quick.
Yeah, I'm at Connor J. Rogers on Twitter. Most of my draft work, is posted all there. Or if you want to listen to more more draft rambling for me. The NFL Stock Exchange podcast I do with Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, has been a lot of fun. We're up 3 times a week, so good luck keeping up with that. I feel like we have a podcast every other hour, but it's awesome, man. And Garrett, it's obviously always good to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.